Mr. Gravisi, right? Was versteht das?
Das weiß er nicht.
Da bist du wild. Was für ein Anruf beantworten?
Good afternoon, Mr. Poettering. First, we would like to thank you for granting this interview for CaleaEuropeana, our multimedia portal focused on European affairs and new policies. You are one of the most experienced politicians in Europe, with a substantial background in the EU history, former EP president and member of this institution since the open elections in 1979 and until 2014. The main vision of EU founding fathers included peace, security, prosperity, and unity between states. But after decades of evolution and integration, and after the fall of the Iron Curtain and EU's enlargement, the European construction seems to be at a crossroads, where many people and many politicians are oscillating between Euroscepticism and Euro-optimism. From your point of view, as a man inside of the EU development for 35 years, how would you describe this process of evolutions, and do you think we might have lost the European ideal?
Thank you very much, first Robert, for this kind introduction, how you describe my person, and I'm very happy to have this interview with you and this dialogue. I think we have all reason to be optimistic. I have seen so many critical situations in the development of the European Union, or before the European Union, the European community. So I think we should see the development of Europe, which is of course not without challenges and problems, in a long term. You rightly mentioned, and I thank you for this, the European Parliament was elected in 1979. If we look back to that time, how did Europe like? My own country, Germany, was divided. There was a wall dividing what is now the capital of Germany, Berlin. And if one wanted to go from the east to the west, you would have been killed. There were nations which are now part of the European Union, occupied by the Soviet Union, like Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania.
The Baltic countries.
The Baltic countries. And your country, Romania, like Poland and many other countries, were part of the Warsaw Pact, of the communist totalitarian world. And now our values prevailed, succeeded. That means the dignity of the human being, freedom, democracy, legal order, what is very, very important, and peace. And we are united, hopefully, by solidarity. And so if we see this development through the 80s and 90s, then I think we have all reason to be optimistic, because communism fell, and like National Socialism already in 1945. And now coming to the present time. Of course, there are critical situations. We have the financial crisis, the banking crisis, in some countries big economic problems, unemployment of the young generation in some countries. And I think we have to do our utmost to solve these problems. And if you have a will, we will succeed. And I have seen very often the situation that, for instance, when the constitutional treaty, which now more or less is a Lisbon Treaty that came into force the 1st of December 2009, when the constitutional treaty failed in May 2005 in France and early June 2005 in the Netherlands, there were many politicians who said, now the treaty is dead. And I had a different opinion, because I learned what Konrad Adenauer, the founder or the person who gave his name to our foundation, what Konrad Adenauer said: if most of the politicians think you cannot solve a problem anymore, then the real work starts. And that's why I'm optimistic, but it needs strong hard work, it needs courage, and it needs a strong will to solve the challenges which we are facing. And each generation is facing new challenges.
Thank you. Second question. In 1979, were held the first elections of the European Parliament. On May 25, we elected a new European Parliament. This year's main campaign was focused on unemployment, Euro crisis, energy, or extremism. But how was it in 1979, or in the 80s, or in the 90s? I'm referring to the campaigns.
Yeah, it was a little bit different, and I think the campaign now in 2014 was a little bit different from country to country. But you described rightly the main topics of the election campaign. In 1979 we had the very first election, and there was a lot of optimism, and the people thought, we need Europe, we need the European community, which is now the European Union. We need a strong Europe, because the communists were the communists in Moscow, the communist world was challenging the West. And we were threatened by the possibility of a nuclear war. And people had a feeling that we need to stay together in Western Europe. And so there was a great optimism for the future development of the European community, which is now the European Union. And I think we need this positive spirit back for Europe. And I would like to see the people of the European Union being more optimistic, because if you look around the world, if you look to Russia, to China, or to many parts of Africa, or even to the United States, then we in the European Union are not a paradise, but we are the better part of the world. And we should be a little bit be more self-confident, and then with this attitude of self-confidence, to combine it, one has to combine it with modesty, then I think we have all the possibility to solve our challenges.
Understand. Going back in time, in 1989, revolutions against communism you mentioned in Eastern Europe and the fall of the Iron Curtain. 2 years later, the collapse of the Soviet Union. Was the European community ready to enhance and promote its values? Did you foresee that after 25 years, EU will be the largest integration project? After 25 years of the end of the communism?
I'm not sure whether I totally understood your question.
I mean, in 1989, when you saw the fall of the Iron Curtain and the revolutions in Eastern Europe, did you expect that in 25 years Europe will be where is it right now?
You are okay. I thought you meant whether we did foresee the fall of the wall and the Iron Curtain. Nobody foresaw it, but it was, and we should say this was due not to the politicians. It was due to the people, and we have to thank the people that they stood up for liberty and for democracy and the legal order. It started in Poland with Solidarność, and finally in Romania and other countries as well. So we have to thank the people, and then there were statesmen, the ladies came later, statesmen who organized the peaceful development. But this was not your question. Coming back to your question, from 1989 to 2014, we could not foresee how Europe would develop. But we did everything that it developed in this direction. I was, as vice chairman of the EPP group in the European Parliament from 94 to 99, responsible for the questions of enlargement. And for instance, the first project was to have only Estonia, Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary and Slovenia to have the negotiation process for enlargement. And we insisted in my working, the working group which I chaired, to include other countries. So Romania and Bulgaria were not so far, but we thought of them as well. But it concerned mainly Latvia and Lithuania, and we insisted that they got a chance to be in the first round as well with Estonia, and they worked hard, and so they could become member of the European Union the 1st of May 2004, together with Estonia and Poland and the Czech Republic, Hungary and Slovakia. So we did something, but we could not foresee how Europe developed, but I think the European Union has done its utmost to support a development to bring the former communist countries like Romania and Bulgaria and others nearer to the European institutions, to the European Union. And if you take everything together, we were very successful. It's really a success story.
I believe that too. What are the main differences and how do you feel EU citizens' perception regarding the European construction then in 1979 or 1980s and now? Do you feel the growth of a material view among people? I mean, they do not believe anymore in ideal. They are thinking only on the problem of unemployment, let's say. Let's put it this way.
I think we have to do both. We have to tell the people our values, and I have spoken about the values, and the main value is the dignity of the human being. And this is unique in the world, that we believe in the dignity of the human being. And if we accept this as our main principle, then it has consequences for all areas of politics. And then it's not acceptable that we have so many young people without work and without a perspective for the future. And so we have to do everything to give good education to the people and then to promote the economic development. This means that we have to give loans to the small and medium enterprises and to big enterprises, of course, as well, but most important are the small and medium enterprises, and so that they can use this money and invest it and build new jobs. I think this is one of the great challenges, but there are other challenges as well. If you look to the foreign policy to Ukraine, the aggression of Russia vis-à-vis Ukraine, but you did not ask this question so far, so I will not speak about that.
It's the next one, the next one question. So, since Vilnius, the EU has an outbreak of a conflict in its eastern neighborhood. Also, there are many voices that say that the EU can play hardball in foreign policy because of its desire to use the soft approach and the multilateral approach. Despite all of this, last month, Georgia, Republic of Moldova, and Ukraine signed the association agreement. Everyone is thinking of this like a very good success in the ex-Soviet space. Do you think that EU is prepared to spread successfully its peaceful and democratic ideals and to carry on a diplomatic and economic dispute with Russia?
This is a great bouquet of problems and challenges you're raising, Robert. First of all, I think it's good that we as European Union try to develop a united foreign security and defense policy, that we try it. When I was elected to the European Parliament in 1979, nobody dared to speak about those questions in the framework of the European community. And I was for 10 years chairman of the Subcommittee Security and Disarmament from 1984 to 1994. And we developed the idea that we should speak about all aspects of security, including the military aspects. And you said the European Union is good in the software of foreign policy, but not so much in the hardware. And we need everything to have a strong European voice, and we still have to work hard on that. As far as Ukraine is concerned, we have to be very clear. There is an aggression of Russia vis-à-vis Ukraine. Russia broke all the international law, taking the Crimea Peninsula out of Ukraine. And even still in 1994, Russia agreed that the island or the peninsula of the Crimea is part of Ukraine because Ukraine gave their nuclear weapons to Russia. And so Russia cannot behave like this. And then what happens now in East Ukraine? There is certainly a connection between those people who are using force with Moscow. And so this has to stop. And the European Union should act, and so far it did, together to tell President Putin you cannot go on like this, and to find a peaceful solution, and we should do everything to support our friends in Kiev. But I say they need a new constitution as well, and they need to give guarantees to the identity of the Russian population in Ukraine. So this is our principle. The majority cannot do everything what they want. In a majority, okay, the majority counts, but you have to respect the minority as well, their cultural identity and so on. And this work still has to be done. And as far as Moldavia and Georgia is concerned, it's their decision what political orientation they want to take. And they asked the European Union, like Ukraine, and it was still, as far as Ukraine is concerned, Yanukovych, who was nearer to Moscow than the present president. So he asked to have this association treaty. And then if they want this, Russia has not the right to say no. We are not living in the 19th century anymore. We are living in the 21st century, and democracy and liberty is the basis, and the rule of law is the basis of this.
Thank you. As a former member of the EP delegation with the United States, the former member of the Foreign Affairs Common Security and Defense Policy Commission, do you think that the EU is affected by the US last year's rotation to Asia Pacific? Do you sense that within the EU-US relations may be room for improvement?
There is always room for improvement in bilateral relations between countries. But I don't see so far that this happens, what you say in your question, Robert. Everybody says the US are now more orienting to the Pacific or to Asia. I don't see this so far if you look to the relations between the United States and China, for instance. So it's very diverse. And I think President Obama and the Americans have realized with the crisis in Ukraine that they cannot forget Europe. And I think we have to teach the world, really to teach the world, what great advantages it is to have the European Union. Within the European Union, we are living peacefully together. We decide by majority voting, mainly, in the European Council, in the Council of Ministers, in the European Parliament. This is a revolution, if you look back to the past of Europe. But the European Union is not the whole Europe. And to Europe belongs Ukraine and Belarus and Russia and other countries as well. So we should tell the world how good it is that we, with all the difficulties we have in the European Union, that we go our way. And I'm very much in favor of a strong alliance between the European Union and the United States of America. And if they make mistakes, or if we make mistakes, we have the right to criticize the other partner or friend. And what the Americans do with the National Security Agency and with NSA is incredible what they do, and we have to criticize them. But even with all those challenges, I say we need them, the United States, as a strong partner. And I, as a German, say it in my speeches, there was no government supporting so much German unification like President Bush, the father, did. Even in Europe, it were the Americans, President Bush, who supported Chancellor Helmut Kohl by that time for the unification. And then, of course, the Europeans in the end helped as well, and the European Parliament was always supporting German unification. But I say it in this context because you ask a question concerning the United States of America. President Bush, the father, George Bush, the father, he was always supportive for German unification.
Mr. Poettering, as a former president of the European Parliament, what can you tell us about the progress made by this institution, and how will this election outcome in France and UK, for example, will affect its activity?
Europe is a long process, and the development of the European Parliament is a process as well. When I was elected for the first time to the European Parliament in 1979, the European Parliament had zero legislative power. And good party friends told me, why do you want to be a member of the European Parliament? Why do you want to be in Strasbourg and Brussels? You have nothing to say. You should go to the German Parliament. And my answer to those friends was, we will make the European Union, which was at that time the European Community, and the European Parliament strong. And so it was a development to make the European Parliament strong. We had the so-called Single Act in the 80s, which was a first step as a treaty to improve the power of the Parliament. And then the Treaty of Maastricht, which was not only the basis for the European currency, it was a breakthrough for for the European Parliament to become or to get co-decision power with the Council of Ministers in the legislative process. Then we had a Treaty of Amsterdam coming into force, I think in '99, so it was a breakthrough. Then the Treaty of Nice was not so successful, but then we discussed the constitutional treaty. Unfortunately, we spoke already about it, failed, but then we had the Lisbon Treaty, and that was another breakthrough, and it was an extraordinary development. And if I would have been asked in 1979, do you think you will be so far with the European Parliament in 2014 as we are now? If somebody could have predicted this, I would have said it's wishful thinking, but I'm afraid we are not there. And we are there. We are very strong concerning the building of the European Commission, and I have written a book, if you want you can read it there, how this development proceeded. And of course, the developments in some countries, the Eurosceptics, the populists, this is an enormous challenge for us, and we have to give the right answers. And my answer to these challenges is, in some areas, we should have less bureaucracy, less administration, but we need more Europe in those fields where we have to cooperate in the internal market, to have a strong European currency, and to develop a strong European, that means EU, foreign security and defense policy.
I understand. As a conclusion for our discussion, how do you see EU's future in the next decade? Will we be more Europeans, and will peace, liberty and prosperity continue to be the EU's highest and most precious values?
This is of course my great hope, but it needs engagement, and it needs a new generation of politicians who have the same ideals as the generation of Konrad Adenauer and my generation had, or I'm still alive, still has. And we have, I think, to understand that Europe, the European Union, is very unique. We are a very unique community. We have the local level. We are here now in Bucharest, the capital of Romania. You have your regions, you have your nations, and we are Europeans. By our national citizenship, we are citizens of the European Union. And so this means we have different identities. And I don't want that everything is regulated from Brussels. No, we have to defend our identity where we are at home. And what can be done in Bucharest or in your villages should not be done by your country or by the European Union. Only those questions which need a national answer or even a European-wide answer, European Union-wide answer, should be decided in Bucharest or in Brussels or as far as legislation is concerned in Strasbourg as well. So we need this understanding of unity in diversity. I think this is very important. And if we believe in our ideals, then I think we will be successful. And I think our ideals, the dignity of the human being, human rights, freedom, democracy, legal order, peace, deserve that we work hard to have a good future for the European continent and make our European contribution for good development of our world in the 21st century.
Thank you. Like Jean Monnet said, we do not bring together states, but we want to unite people.
Yes, and we need this, I can agree. And he said as well, nothing is possible without the human beings. Nothing is durable without institutions. And that's why it's so important to have strong European institutions which respect the identity of the nations and the local level. Together we are strong. Unity in diversity.
Thank you very much for a pleasant conversation, Mr. Poettering for CaleaEuropeana, and wir wünschen Ihnen einen schönen Besuch in Romania.
I thank you very much, Robert. It was very nice answering to your intelligent questions, and I don't know whether my answers were as intelligent as your questions, but I hope I did what you expected.
It was very good, Mr.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, was ist das hier? Ist das jetzt